this is Carolyn from Hello Vintage, and welcome to my dark academia lair. This is my super fancy 1920s leaded glass fancy bookcase that I got from the free section of Craigslist, which I'm very, very proud of. I have gotten numerous requests on which books people should start reading, what my book recommendations are, so I figured I'd do a little bookshelf tour and show you some of my favorites. If you find a book about vintage fashion and you can get it, then you might as well read it, but I only want to show you my favorites. Before we start, all of these things are my opinion. These are just my personal, Carolyn, recommendations of books that I personally have found helpful and that I think would be helpful to other people. Just take it with a grain of salt. If there's something that you see that you want to read more about and I said that it's not my favorite, then read it, because why not? It's cool. Reading's fun. A few pointers of things to think about when you are buying some of your first books for your collection, or also, you don't have to buy these. Check them out from your local library. That's a cool option. Economical. Some of the books that I do not recommend buying, at least at the beginning, are books about individual designers. These books are just like keepsake items. So for example, these Vogue on books, I would say are cool to look through. They have pictures, which are fun. Or like these like expose books on Gucci. They're not as informative, and if you want to get a scope of fashion history in general, they're interesting, they're fun, they're cool, but not super necessary. These would be really cool if you wanted to check these out at a library, or if you find them used or as a gift to someone, or if you really, really like that designer, or if you collect pieces from a specific designer, it's really cool to have a book with their archive on it, but less necessary. Similarly, I would say these sorts of books. I know these are really popular because you can buy them at museums and stuff, so a lot of times these would be gift shop books, but like 50 Bags That Changed the World, or 50 fashion looks that changed the 70s. They're fun. They don't get into a lot of detail. They don't give you a lot of context about things. They're really interesting to read. What I do, since they're so short, these are usually like 100 pages or so. I bring these on flights with me if I have like a short flight. So if I have to fly from like San Francisco down to Los Angeles, I can usually finish one of these during a flight. These are another one I would totally recommend getting from a library or borrowing from a friend. I don't think that these are the best for starting a collection, but they are interesting. Good quick reads. Here's a quick tip. If you find books like these, buy the paperback version instead of the hardback. The hardback ones are like these giant ones, $50 to $100. They're really expensive. They're really cool. If you want something for your coffee table, they're worth it. But you can get the exact same information. This one was $10. I paid $50 for my other one, so I ended up selling my other one and keeping this one because I'm cheap. But yeah, quick tip. If you find one of those giant reference books, see if there's a paperback copy for like $10. Saves you some money. Some interesting ones, but not super necessary, are the fashion books that are written by designers, kind of like more like autobiographical. So this one was gifted to me by a customer who was super, super sweet. She was 94 and she still came in and she loved perusing our racks to see things and just kind of go through memory lane. So this was one of the books that she gave me, and it's really interesting to read. I would say that this is more of just like a fun leisurely read. I didn't learn a whole lot from it, but it's fun to kind of get the inner workings of a designer's mind. This one's actually really cool. This one is called Vintage Menswear. It's pretty rare to find comprehensive books just about menswear, as opposed to just the history of costume in general, or specifically women's ones. So if you find a menswear volume that's thick and big and juicy and has tons of pictures and information, I would definitely snap up something like this. This one is Vintage Menswear by Sims, Luckett and Gunn. Okay, this one, I see this everywhere. If you are into historical costuming, this is more the history of fashion from forever till now. So this is really cool if you want just an overview of fashion. It has some pictures and lots of history. It is by R. Turner Wilcox. Similarly, The history of costume is really, really good if you are into sewing costuming because it has patterns on it. And it shows you how to construct things. It is really, really good, and you can always find these used for way less, so I wouldn't pay more than like $10 for this to buy one used. I always buy books secondhand. It's more fun that way. Oh, and this one is by Carl Kohle. I don't know how to pronounce it lots. This one's pretty interesting. The Costume and Fashion by James Laver, I don't know. But it's pretty cool. It has color photos, which are always fun, and it's not super, super in-depth, but it's really interesting, and if you want something that's easy to read and easy to digest that isn't like 500 pages of text, then this is a really good one. Oh, speaking of menswear, this one is excellent. It is called American Menswear, so this isn't going to work for European or menswear from around the world, but it's menswear. We take what we can get. This one is by Daniel Hill, and it has illustrations and information, and this is a really good one. I recommend this one. This one is really good. Like super, super good, especially if you have things and you don't know what they are and you want more information about them. This is Vintage Clothing by Marianne Dolan. And this is super, super good. The prices are really outdated because it gives you like price values and stuff, so just ignore those. But it shows you like different sleeve types, and then it has all sorts of different examples. And what's really cool is that they'll take things that were from fashion plates or from advertisements and then describe it and kind of give a ballpark of what it's worth. Oh my goodness, strapless gown, 1952. I have this one. So now I get to know about it. If you ever find a book from the Kyoto Costume Institute, buy it, because their photography is incredible and their collection is amazing. So you can see really, really incredible examples of different garments from fashion from around the world, and their book quality is incredible. So anything by the Kyoto Costume Institute is fantastic. So I know they have this one. I have this one too. This one's really good. This gives you examples of corsets, shoes, all sorts of things. So this one's really good. Anything by Kyoto Costume Institute. Great books, great quality. This is a really interesting one if you are into vintage textiles in general. So appropriately named Vintage Textiles. This doesn't just deal with clothes, it deals with laces, quilts, all sorts of things. So if you're more into the textile and sewing area, or just into both, The Complete Guide to Vintage Textiles by Elizabeth Carella. Okay, so if you are getting into Victorian fashion and you want to learn about different decades, there are oodles of books that are just fashion plates, and then they're all dated, so they tell you when it's from. So if you look through these, you can kind of start to get a good idea of what is from when. So this is the book that got me started in learning about vintage fashion history. This is what I read before I opened up my first store, just so I could get some good context around things. I was still learning how to date items. I was learning how to figure out like what was real 60s and what was like early 2000s to 60s, learning about important designers. I would say this one is a little more UK based, so you'll learn a lot more about UK designers. Vintage Fashion Complete by Nikki Albrechtsen. And this has tons and tons of pictures. It's extra large. It is categorized by decade. Super helpful. I read this cover to cover. I consider this a whole course of fashion education. This is more of just a show and tell moment. But Jessica McClintock signed this for me. Ah! Okay. This is one of my favorite books because as an American, I have not learned that much about world textiles and world fashion because that's what Americans do apparently. So this book is fantastic if you see something with a cool pattern and you know it's not from here and you want to know where it's from. It has oodles and oodles of color pictures, and it is separated by parts of the world. It gives you a history of the garment within the culture. This book is fantastic and I highly, highly recommend. It is called The Worldwide History of Dress, Patricia, Reef, and a Walt. It's excellent. Also expensive, so buy it used. If you want an introduction to fashion history, this is a really good one. Ooh. Fashion by DK and the Smithsonian. So it has lots of cool extant examples and photographs. These books kind of remind me of when I was younger and I would look at books about like zoo animals and stuff. It's kind of in a very palatable, easy to read, easy to peruse format. So this is an excellent one if you are just getting into it and you want to see examples but you don't necessarily want to read oodles and oodles of text, or if you don't know where to start. This is a good starting point for you to be able to research off of this. If you are a nerd and you like to read, this is a really, really good book. It just has a lot of a lot of a lot. So sometimes it will just have walls of text. But it is really cool because it is showing fashion history in its historical context, which I think is awesome because fashion is a response and not an island. Thank you, Amanda, for Ultimate Fashion History. Here's another really cool menswear book called Raining Men. It's Raining Men. Sharon Sadako Takeda, Kay Derlin Spilker, and Clarissa Esguerra, with essays by Tim Blanks and Peter McNeil. This book has amazing photography, really cool. I want everything in here. Really excellent book. If you are into jewelry, Understanding Jewellery, the British way, is a really good, very comprehensive book about vintage jewelry. All sorts of information in this book. So this is Understanding Jewelry by David Bennett and Daniela Muschetti. This is another show-off moment, but this book was signed by Dita Von Teese, and it says, Carolyn, best of luck with Hello Vintage! Okay, I know I'm gonna eat my words about not buying books about individual designers, but oh my gosh. The Alexander McQueen book is so good. Personally biased because I really like McQueen. But the photography is amazing. Like, they made this mannequin bloody. Like, yeah, okay, this is really cool. And also the cover's really cool. Sorry, I just went against everything that I stood for, saying not to buy books about individual designers, but the Alexander McQueen Treasury Thesaurus Maximum book is excellent. Ugh. Okay, this one is so heavy. It comes in a sleeve. Oh gosh. Okay. Fashion. 150 years of style plates. This is so cool. It's just so heavy. I think it starts in the Rococo or the Romantic period. It's great, especially if you want to see original pieces, but it also has commentary about it. Very heavy, very expensive, but oh my gosh, it's excellent. I love it. Gotta get it to focus. So this one might be a huge tease because I don't know how you can get this. So I feel really bad. The Tasha Tudor Historic Costume Collection, which is basically the auction catalog from Augusta Auctions from 2007. It's so good. I hate that I'm recommending this because I really don't know how anyone can get this, but it has pictures of the entire collection, which is like from the 1700s to slightly more contemporary, but it's like a fashion museum in a book. It's so good. It's so thorough. The collection was amazing. I am really, really upset that I was in 7th grade when this auction happened because I had $0 and didn't know anything about fashion history, so I couldn't appreciate this, but like they even have pictures of Tasha Tudor like wearing the clothes. It's so cool. If you can get it, get it. I don't know what else to say. It's great. If you are into historical costuming, sewing, any of that sort of thing, this is a really good book. Fashion in Detail. It has close-ups of really cool antique and vintage pieces, and some of them also have patterns of how it's constructed. So it's a really, really valuable resource and has really cool examples of extant garments. So this is a really awesome book. So these are all of my recommendations from the Dark Academic Book Tour. All of these are just examples of the plethora of amazing vintage fashion books there are out there. This is by no means a comprehensive list. These are just a few that I picked out that I particularly enjoyed reading and learning from, but I have hundreds of books. Literally any of these are great resources. If you read anything, you're gonna know more than what you knew before, so yeah. So that's all for today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Halloween, happy Dark Academia Ween, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I would love to shout out these earrings that I bought from my friend La Bruja Jewellery. I just wanted to give her a shout out because is this not the coolest Dark Academia earrings you've ever seen?